Excellent. Some very innovative and path-breaking thoughts out of the Middle East, Tariq. So, thank you very much. I'll move to our final panelist and put him in a spot because it's difficult to come on last. Everybody has put their thoughts out. You need to churn your notes a bit, Dr. Salvi.
I was doing that, in fact.
So let's hear your thoughts on this one.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. First, let me just briefly tell you about the organization that I represent. I am the Chief Program Associate CSR for the All India Institute of Local Self-Government. It was set up in 1926, much before India got independence. It was basically set up to help India turn urban. Yeah, because the largest ill that's going to face the world and is facing Mumbai, where we are all having this conference, is urban poor. Yeah, so it's a huge group of people coming in, always available, but never helped. Yeah, so that's how it started in 1926. We did a lot of work with World Bank, GTZ, USAID, UN's UNCTAD, and so on, but mostly in the realm of NGO, if I were to use my colleague's reference point. Yeah, so we were working on charities and then helping them put it in impactful areas. What we realized over the years was that it was not helping so much where we wanted it to make an impact. So we changed our direction. We started a consultancy cell, which would work on capacity building. We set up a management institute and so on and so forth. And the first revelation that happened was something which is connected to the topic that we are going to discuss, that we are discussing today, which is good to great. Yeah, and I think I might probably strike a chord between those companies who don't feel that they are as yet great, who are still in the good area. And one of the biggest problems that we all face is that when we are wanting to go from good to great, we start making the great the enemy of the good, which means that the long term becomes the enemy of the short term. My profits will go at stake if I try to think about the planet, and that's the type of countries that I've been talking to. And when we spoke to these companies, the first question we normally asked is, have you started a CSR activity, or do you have a CSR wing in your organization? Some of them said no. Most of them would say, yes. And that's where we came from. I would like to take in something from academia. There's a professor, Dr. Simon Zadek at Harvard Business School, who has developed something called the 5-stage model of organizational learning. From his point of view, what he says is that organizations are in either of these 5 stages when they go from good to great. So either they are, at the most bottom stage, they're defensive, where they say, no, it's not my job. It's the government's job. It's somebody else's job to do this thing. The second, who say they're compliant. So they want to do it because they don't want to go on the wrong side of any government ministry or some tax body or something. The third ones are more managerial. So they want to do it because stupid, there's a lot of profit there. There's a lot of business opportunity there. So there are lots of people who will go for that. Then there are a little more evolved who go for competitive edge and so on, who are strategic. And the last ones are the really great ones who really look at it as a social and a civil duty, who would like to ensure that everybody participates in the welfare initiative. So in a sense, I'm not talking to the ones who are already in the civil stage. I'm talking to some ones who are actually going there. In our first interaction, we always ask them, so who is in charge of CSR in your organization? Is it HR or is it marketing? And you'll see the whole edifice of good versus great falling down there, because someone will say, it's actually, no, it's HR. And someone will say, it's still with marketing. And there's this huge confusion about where does the apple, who's going to carry the apple? So to, the apple from the Eve to the Adam is what I'm trying to say. So it's like, it's not mine, and that's where the whole edifice comes. That's where the coin falls, that's where the moment of truth comes in. And what we have seen is, and I would like to actually appreciate Blue Star, because it's organizations who actually struggle with this question, know, like what some of my panelists said, that my CSR goal should be an enabling goal to my business. It should be a customer-focused goal. So what I want to start as a starter say, and where our consultancy has worked in AILSG, is in the field of social innovation, where it tries to help those in the society. We call demand in business as willingness and ability to pay. There are lots of people in the world who have the ability, who may not have the ability, and also lack the willingness, because they don't know that they can demand something like this. So in one of our consultancies, when we were working with one of the leading retail chains in India, Shoppers Stop, the question that we started with is if my customer was a deaf and dumb or was from the unknown sections of society, would he find pride of place working in my organization or walk up to me as a customer and say, I want a good trouser, shirt, or a apparel? And would I be served with the same efficiency that a normal customer would do? You know, this is a customer who is not even asked for help, but he definitely needs help. And that's how the program started, and we realized that all the innovations that go into making deaf, dumb, and all those sections of society, it could be either economically backward, physically, mentally challenged, or in whichever way, helping those people fall into the mainstream. Innovations that work on those lines are going to be the ones that will drive successful innovation. And the CEO, Sri Khande of Shoppers Stop, CEO of Blue Dart, who has thought of making these consumer-oriented programs, are actually going to make the people from the society who are not even able, not just not able, but not even willing to participate and become consumers of your product. These companies are going to be the ones who can make the change between good and then going towards great. Because the customer is the driving force for most of these companies. So that's what is my take when we start today.
Excellent. Thank you, Professor. Very valid thoughts here. I'd like to open the debate now with the permission of the panel to the members of the audience for any questions to the panel. So if you have a question directed to any individual gentleman on the dais, please raise your hand, stand up, and mention his name when you ask the questions. And please raise your hand. We'll ensure that a mic comes to you. And please feel free to ask questions and prove a point that the morning is not very difficult.
I am Prakash Tiwari. I am the head of the CSR of the Jindal Group, of CSR and Education. My question is to Soumitra. You said now most of the corporates have started raising foundation. I will say as far as most of the companies are concerned and big corporates are concerned, they are having foundations since long. Whether you talk in terms of Tatas, you talk in terms of Birlas, you talk in terms of Jindals, like in
going to get projects from the corporations, and the corporations also, their think tank is also thinking about how to work, because see, ultimately they will align the CSR with their business agenda. And if with business, you float a fund, you see these IPOs coming, you float a fund, you're looking at long-term sustainable resources coming into your company. So they will actually look at long-term alignment of CSR with their business agenda to work for their sustainability as well as their profitable issues. But just give it some time, and I would just request the civil society organizations to not get apprehensive right now. Give it 1 year, by 2015 you will see the long-term things flowing. And a lot of good think tank exists within these corporations to take it that way, believe me.
Yeah, and Benazir, that's not the complete answer. Because I have a very involved panel here, and Benjamin also wants to come.
I'm going to come from another angle. When I invest in a social enterprise or when I support, I look long term. I look 5 years, 8 years, 10 years. But guess what? I also only give for the first year. And so it'd be sad if you were to call me myopic. I think first of all, when you raise a volunteer to volunteer with you, or you raise a donor, you do it one time, you develop the volunteer, you develop the donor so he comes back a second year, third year, or fourth year. When you go to a company and the company only commits 1 year, the company is giving you a chance for that 1 year to educate that company, to tell him what you're doing in that 1 year with this money with the company's money for the first year, and then to sell him the idea why he should continue to then support you the second year, third year, the fourth year. And a renewable 1 year commitment is equivalent to a long-term commitment. I think our problem is when we take a 1 year gift or 1 year handout and we take it as a handout, then we disappear. And then 1 year later we appear again and we say, can you give it to us again? And we never bothered with what I call with the partnership relationship. We never bothered to educate, right? We never bothered to sell our idea. So any organization worth its salt would only give you 1 year, especially if you're going to them for the first time, right? But the onus is on you or on us approaching the corporate to say, how can I fully utilize that 1 year to educate this donor, to win their heart, to get to know the people inside, to know what makes them tick, why is CSR the way it is? And maybe 1 year later, you might choose to walk away from them because they put all kinds of strings attached to their money. Or you might walk away from them because you realize that's not the area of their priority. My second simple answer is if you go to an organization that's only give you 1 year, I'm sorry, but this is India, this is South Asia, this is the whole Asia. There are many other companies that you can turn to who will give you more than 1 year. So don't get hung up on that one company that only gives you 1 year, right? Thank you.
Thank you.
one last word.
Oh, yeah, one more panelist.
Actually, I sympathize with her, so I have to say this because I represent an NGO who worked with the same pitfalls, and our customers used to be World Bank, and even they used to give it to us for only 1 year. And the next year we had to go back to them saying why we were good because they were 27 like us. All the 27 states had one like us, so we had to say why we were better at spending those $100,000 that they gave to us and not to someone else, or equally to someone else. And so we had to, what impact investors call, prove what is called SROI, social ROI. And those are some impact tools which you will probably be hearing more about when CSR gets talked about. And second thing that we learned is that as a business entity, we should look at related diversification. You should diversify into areas. There's a professor called Gary Hamel and C.K. Prahlad who have written their topic on core competencies. They say you have to go into related areas of diversification. So from maybe child labor, you go into something else which is related and use the competence that you have gathered here to some other areas so that you become less dependent on only one source of funds. So today we are working with something like 32 agencies that fund us. And if one person says buy for 1 year, they come back after 4 years. That's probably the model that will work for you. If not, you can come to us for consultancy.
And we have crossed our time by nearly 20 minutes. I have a panel that's ready to sit on and talk, and I have one hand going up and requesting me in the front that I have a question. So with your permission, I will take one last question, and then we will break for coffee. Thank you for your patience, everybody.
Thank you, Ketan. I'm Pushpa. I come from an organization that talks to both sides. This is GuideStar India. We work with the givers as well as the non-profit organizations. I'd like to add to Benjamin that a key thing here is engagement. For the corporations to engage and invest a little bit time, Soumitra talked about research. So when you research, when you learn, and when you're actually speaking and talking and understanding, I think the educational process helps you decide at the end of 1 year, you come back richer about either supporting the same organization or diversify or work with others. At the same time, Benazir, for you and for all the NGOs, I'm as much a part of the NGO community. It's very important, as you said, to build a relationship and to stay engaged. I think we all forget about staying involved and engaged. And even when we send reports, we are just sending what is asked and not telling the story behind. Often, we don't explain the reason for failures and challenges, which I think is a more educational process. I would also, at this point, tell the companies when you're reporting 1 year henceforth, don't just report successes, open up the dialogue for what hasn't worked, and that could be so useful to build up research because as a country, we are not really strong in research in most areas. And I think if we start feeling a sense of openness and start dialoguing a couple of years from now when we have this session, we'll have a lot to kind of talk really on the meat and not just about getting to know each other and building the trust deficit. Thank you.
And I think one of the key aspects of conferences like this should be, this is my suggestion, should be case studies. Positive, negative, you can treat the negative failures as learnings, but I think a lot of case studies bring in a lot of examples and where you can stand up and say, wow, if this model has worked, how can we work? So a lot of this events and conferences are about discussions, but I think it can be capacitated if with certain case stories across the globe, it is going to be a much more better story.
Soumitra, this one is unfortunately or fortunately. So we will have Simone and Priyanka
the whole day there are a
and
lot of case
Hidi
studies.
talk about a lot of case studies. So we will expect to listen to them. Thank you very much. A round of applause I request for the panelists. And do see you all here in the room after a 15-minute coffee break for the next panel. Thank you, everybody.